Hey, good morning. I'm going to fiddle with the camera because it's crooked. And that will drive me nuts the entire time that we're talking. So, looks okay. Good morning, everybody. And thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe if you find this interesting. It helps with the stats and all the stuff. Hi, Tina. Like, subscribe, share, all the platform algorithms, things that we have to think about. So, okay, I had written down some stuff yesterday to talk about, and it didn't make any sense this morning. If you've ever kept a dream journal, like you write your stuff down and then you look at it in the morning, like wake up in the middle of the night, write down a dream, and then you wake up in the morning and you're like, what is this? This is like just garbage. I don't even know. So that's what happened. I was like, oh, this is a great idea. And I scribbled the note down. I was like, I don't know what that means. So I put it out on Facebook. Oh, thank you. I actually washed it this morning. Usually I wash it in the afternoon and then it doesn't look that great in the morning. So I threw it out on Facebook, and feel free to leave topic requests in the comments because it's really helpful to me. Sometimes I have ideas and sometimes I'm just like, I don't know what to talk about. I don't plan these ahead of time really. So I had a request to talk about urgency and how to avoid it. So that sense of urgency, I'm going to make some assumptions because I didn't ask for detailed questions about from Sharon who threw that topic out. But it's funny because yesterday I was talking about that with a class I teach called Human Design Basics for Business. It's in beta testing right now. So leave a comment if you want to know when it's open again. But I was just talking about this urgency. Yeah, okay. So I made some notes to make sure I cover it all. But I'll tell you that a good question to ask is this mine? So I'm going to talk about where this shows up in the human design chart too. I've got a little diagram here I'll show you in a second. But the story I told was I used to be a therapist, if you don't know me, and I specialized in trauma and addictions. And I was trained in EMDR, which is a modality for trauma. And at the training, we just, you bring up a memory or something that has tension around it that's on a low scale because you're in a room with 150 other people and you work through it. So the memory that came up for me was this anxiety about being on time. And I remember going to a school play. I don't think I told this group that part, but I was thinking first grade, and I was living with my aunt, and she was always late for everything, is my memory of it. And there was all this yelling to get in the car and anxiety, like her anxiety, and I don't blame her for that. There was a lot of kids in that house. Me, my sister, foster kids, her kids, like lots of kids. And trying to get everybody in the car, I'm sure, was a nightmare. So, but there was always yelling, get in the car, hurry up, get in the car, we're going to be late, la, 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 la. So I really took all that anxiety and turned it into this weird anxiety about being on time. Like I was always super early to everything, a half hour at least early to everything. So I was always that person sitting in my car, wasting time till it was actually time for the appointment. So, and there's nothing wrong with being early. What was wrong about it was my anxiety level about being early. And I never knew where that came from. And it just came from family modeling. So that's one thing to consider. If you're always feeling under pressure, is that really you? Or is that what was modeled for you in your family of origin? If there was lots of anxiety, then as a kid, we go, oh, well, to be a human here, we have to be anxious. To be a human here, we have to run around and be, flinging stuff everywhere and very worried about being on time someplace. So you can start to ask that question, like, is this how I want to be? Or is this how I learned to be? Or rather, if this is how I learned to be in the world, is this how I want to continue to be in the world? Because I'm a grown up now and I don't have 700 kids to get in the car. And if I'm late for something, it's not really that big a deal unless it's a flight that I miss, and that would upset me greatly. So, you can pick that apart just by asking those questions, because you know the answer to that, and your gut will tell you, like, oh yeah, my mom and dad were really anxious people, and so I interpreted that to mean that I needed to be anxious too, which is what we do as kids. That's fine. But now we're grown-ups and we can choose something else. Another question you can ask yourself is, whose emergency is this? Especially as women and parents, we have a tendency to make other people's emergencies our emergencies. Good morning. And it may not be our emergency. Just because they're having an emergency doesn't mean we have to make it our emergency too. So a lot of parents, because you're in the mode of children, and that's probably what was modeled for you too, or if you struggle with any kind of shade of codependency or anything like that, we have a tendency to jump in and fix things, sometimes even before we're asked. So if someone's having a problem, one of our kids or friends or whoever, and we know we can fix it, it's quite common to just get in there and start fixing it without asking if the person wants you to fix it. Maybe they want to struggle through the problem, or without checking to see with your own body, like, is this appropriate, or is there somebody else that can help them fix it? Like, do I have to be the one that fixes it, or if I just stand here and do nothing, will they find someone else? I can tell you 90% of the time, if you stand there and go, oh, I wonder how you're going to fix that, they'll find some way to fix it, or they'll find someone else that will jump in and fix it for them. But that can be really hard to do if you don't have good boundaries and you're not used to watching people struggle, and you're not used to the discomfort it creates in you watching someone struggle with something that you know you could fix. That's a process you might have to go through. So you might catch yourself after you've jumped in and be like, damn it, I said I wasn't going to do that anymore. And then you can backtrack it. And then when it happens again, maybe you have that pause between stimulus and response where you get to choose, like the choice, the gap of choice, the gap that creates time, a split second sometimes for you to go, oh, yeah, I'm not going to fix everybody's problem anymore. Just because their urgency is, I can feel their urgency and their upset and their tension doesn't mean anything to me. Like, I can be here and be supportive, but I don't have to jump in and fix it. And a lot of times when we're in that habit of jumping in and fixing, we don't realize that we're actually not helping them. People learn through doing. Most people learn through having to do it themselves. So if we're always circumventing that process and obstructing their having to go through that struggle, then they don't get to learn how it feels to feel the frustration and struggle and pop out on the other side having solved it. Like, they don't get to feel that sense of pride and accomplishment for going through something hard, for sticking with something that's difficult. We rob them of that. So we think we're doing the right thing. We've been told that's the right thing to do. Again, especially as women, we've been told that's the right thing to do, but it's not really at the deeper levels. So that can create a sense of urgency. The immediate thing to do if you're experiencing a sense of urgency is to just stop. Like, the second you become aware of it, like, the pressure, the push, the anxiety, the stuff that goes on, is to just stop in that moment and take a breath. And then take another breath. And then take another breath. Big, deep breaths. 3 breaths is enough to spin you around. So I heard it at a conference years ago, and I've stolen it and used it ever since. 3 breaths in 60 seconds to spin yourself 180 degrees in the opposite direction. So if you're super, super, super stressed, you take your 3 breaths in 1 minute. That's about 20 seconds per breath. And you sometimes have to work up to that because that's long. And then by the end of that 3 breaths, you're moving the opposite direction toward peace and calm. If you can at least remember to take those 3 breaths when you feel that pressure, that sense of pressure that you have to do something, and all the thoughts that come with that, you stop that process in its tracks, and then you create a bigger gap between the stimulus of that and the choosing your response. So you stop reacting and you start responding. Stopping ourselves from reacting when it's a habit or almost a mandate. Like if you learned that with your family, it's in your internal policies and procedures manual. And it's really in there. It's really embedded in there. And it feels really wrong in the beginning not to do it. But just stopping, take those 3 deep breaths, and think about it. Like, do I really want to respond? Go back to asking those questions. Is this my problem? Is this a habit I have? If I stand here, will they find someone else or will they figure it out? They usually will. But we have to stop ourselves from intervening. It doesn't mean being mean to people. You don't have to be like, I'm hands off now, figure it out. Whatever, I'm out of here. You can be supportive and you can make suggestions about resources like, hey, here's some resources I think might be helpful to you. Here's a Post-it note, or here's an email with some resources. Good luck. And let me know how it goes if you really want to know how it goes. Maybe you don't. So, and then the other way, so stories, expectations, whose emergency, whose problem is this? That's like a basic parenting class technique. I can't remember which parenting method that's from, even though I used to teach it. But it's stopping and asking yourself, whose problem is this anyway? Maybe it's not yours. Okay, so in human design terms, let me see if I can get this where you can see it. This is a human design chart if you're not familiar. If you haven't had your chart read and you want to meet with me about that, you can go to the website, thatmichellewolf.com/human design. So it's the same chakra system that we're used to, only with 2 extra ones. It's a 9-centered system rather than a 7-centered system. But I want to bring your attention to, it looks like it's blurry. So the root center, the root chakra, and the head center and the head chakra. Those are the 2, and they're called pressure centers in that human design system. So whether they're defined, open, or undefined, so if you have your chart but you haven't had a reading to interpret it, or it's not really a reading, it's more of an interpretation. I should probably change the language on that. But if it's all white on your chart and there's no little numbers that are highlighted, then it's open. If it's white and there's some of those little numbers are, circled or highlighted, or, they're marked in some way, because every system prints out different looking charts, then that means your root center is undefined. If it's colored, then it's defined. Either way, for the root center and the head center, but especially the root center, that's a high pressure system. It's our survival center. It's everything you've heard about the root chakra, and it's our community area. It's our gotta take care of everybody area, and it's very pressure-y. It pressures us to move, to act. So that's a survival thing, right? We need to be in motion. And we also don't. So it's dependent on it. We're responsible to feel the pressure and then ask the questions. Like, is this just the normal pressure of a root chakra? Or is this really an impulse to do something? And in human design, you know the answer to that by checking with your authority, which is unique to you. So that's a little bit different. And so just be aware that if you're, not into human design, that pressure can be coming from your own body, the pressure to act. And then from the head, the crown chakra, you can feel that pressure to think. So the questions to ask in those times in this system is, for the root is, am I in a hurry to get things done so I can feel free of pressure? Am I in a hurry to get things done so I can feel free of this pressure? So just know that you won't ever feel free of the pressure because it's a pressure center. If you've been out of your body for a long time, you're not used to feeling that pressure and you think it means something. You think you have to do something with it and you don't. It's always been there. But if you've been living up here for decades and then you start to do embodiment work and get down in your body and feel it, you're like, oh my God, what the hell is this pressure? It's always been there. You just haven't been aware of it. Same thing with the head. The question for the head is, am I trying to answer everybody else's questions? If somebody around me got a question and I feel somehow responsible for getting them an answer? Am I overthinking? Am I trying to know? Am I trying to be right? That can happen too. Am I trying to be the one who knows everything? Do I have a story that I need to know everything, or, in order to be safe? So then you're impacting your root and your head chakra because you think you have to know in order to be safe down in your body. And so then you've got this bouncing and all this pressure can really feel overwhelming. So just stopping and taking those 3 breaths slows you down so that you can begin to explore it and get curious about it. Like, those same questions. Do I think if I get all this done, I'm going to feel free of pressure? You won't. Do I think if I come up with the right answer and solve their problem, then they'll be okay so I can feel okay and relax? That's not how it works. We think it's how it works, but we have decades of experience showing us that that's actually not how it works. It's never really a good idea to make decisions and take action on a sense of urgency. Intuition does not show up like urgency. Urgency shows up like compulsion, obsession. If you are struggling with addiction, it can show up as craving, pressure to do, pressure to act, pressure to overthink. Is this making sense to you? It's not something that you actually need to do. So if you think back over times that you felt your intuition and you've made decisions and they were great, times that you felt urgency and pressure and made decisions, how did that go? Usually your intuition is that still small voice, that little flash of, I wonder if maybe I should. I wonder about that. It's like a little nudge. It's like a little tap on your shoulder. It's very rarely a club to the head. Club to the head is usually mind doing something funky. Mind and conditioning, like social conditioning, family modeling, things that we've talked about. So we form those strategies as kids. Like if it comes through the family, we form a strategy that says, I have to do, peace. Intuition can feel like peace. To me, intuition, I can have all this. It's like the ocean metaphor. There's all this activity on top. But if I sit still and meditate and think about the issue, I can feel all the stuff on top, all the mind stuff. But then I feel this kind of certainty, like, even if it doesn't make sense, take this next step. Like even if it on paper it's completely illogical, you need to take this next step. Well, not even you need to take this next step. Like this is a really optimal step for you to take, but you still have free will. You still don't have to take it. And we have plenty of examples where we ignored our intuition and it didn't go so great for us because we were getting the intuition and then our mind was like, yeah, but that doesn't make sense. Or I tried that once before and it didn't work. Or, all the stuff that we do that trips us up. So, and there's probably other ways to think about urgency, but to me, all of this stuff comes down to choice and stimulus response. There is a gap between what you see outside of yourself that starts a reaction and what you choose to do with that, to react or respond. There's a little gap of time in there that in the beginning doesn't feel like it really exists, but you'll have to trust me on this one. It really does exist. You really do have a gap where you can make choice. You may not be conscious of that because you're not self-aware enough to recognize when you're reacting versus responding. So that's what I've got on urgency. Do you have any questions? That's pretty much it. There's probably other ways to look at it, but that's all that comes to mind this morning. That, and then everything, I handle everything with stop and take a breath, find that gap, ask yourself the questions, and then be a sovereign storyteller, which is also coming up. Opens for registration in July on the website. You can see it, Sovereign Storytellers. It says enrollment opens July 1st. But that's what you're wanting to do, and that's what we do in that class. Is you want to be the one who's in charge of your stories. You want to be telling the story of, you know what, I've got time to stop and ask some questions. I have all the time that I need. I have the right and the boundaries. I get to stop and ask myself, do I actually want to help this person and their situation? I was going to say drama because a lot of times it is drama, right? When we're dealing with other people in a sense of urgency, there's usually some level of drama. Maybe it's a small d drama or a big D drama, but there's usually something going on that's actually not really yours. You want to be the one that's sovereign. You want to stand in your own space and evaluate the circumstances and then choose from a place of power what you're going to do, if anything. Otherwise, we end up with what? A big bucket of bitterness, a big basket of resentment, a big bunch of self-recrimination, like what the hell again? I played the rescuer again. I helped, I got involved. They sucked me into their crap again. You get all that crap. You don't need that crap. It's not yours. It's probably a habit. So taking the breath, I have all the time that I need. Yeah, you just remind yourself of that. Tina said that. Just remind yourself that you are a sovereign being. You don't have to be whipped around by the circumstances outside of you. If you're waiting for the circumstances outside of you to change so that you can feel solid and sovereign, you'll be waiting your entire life because the circumstances outside of us they're never settled. They're always moving. We are always moving. We just are not conscious of that most of the time. So, as always, I'll recommend to you a daily practice of 5 to 15 minutes of silent meditation, just listening to the sounds in the room or the sounds of your breath or counting to. You can leave. You can deal with it. You can get involved. You can choose your own level of involvement. You can say, here's some resources and go. You can just go. You can say, I know that you are going to figure this out. Like, I have faith in you. You're smart. I know you're smart. You might not feel smart right now, but I know that you can figure this out. And I'm going to go to the, bookstore. I'm going to go get some coffee now while you work on figuring that out. But you get to choose your level of involvement, if any. The point is to be responding through empowered choice, not reacting through training, martyrdom, that can knock us into victim mode. If we're not comfortable with our own failures, then watching someone else fail can feel pretty unbearable. So there's boundary stuff here too. Um, okay. if you have any questions about any of this, leave a comment. What's coming up? Human design readings or interpretations are always there. Single clarity sessions are always there. If you are in a tight spot and can't find an answer for yourself, that's what clarity sessions are. And then courses coming up is Sovereign Storytellers that I already mentioned. And July 11th is Welcoming the Crone through Self-Portraiture. That one, I'm going to teach you how to take your face and make art with it. It's for 35 and over because you youngsters have other stuff. But we're going to work for 3 weeks, take a week off, and then 2 more weeks using our face as a source of inspiration and making art. Self-portraits, not exactly selfies, but really examining our face and playing with lighting and playing with composition. We're going to start out with raw photography, like no filters, all kinds of different lights, all kinds of different circumstances, first thing in the morning, after you've done your makeup. Like, we're going to do all kinds of stuff. And then we're going to do art projects related to how our bodies look at these ages after 35. And then we're going to go into using how to use digital filters, not to erase all your wrinkles, unless you really feel like you just have to. But if you really feel like you just can't bear your wrinkles at the end of this class, I'm going to feel like a failure. But to take digital filters and have fun with them and really like apply cool filters to your face and play with distortion and different ways you can, use your face and body as a canvas, like a living canvas. So that's going to be fun. Welcoming the Crone through Self-Portraiture. That's on the website. That's a beta class, so it's only $179. And there'll be a Facebook group, and we'll be coaching, and I'll be giving you some exercises to do to dig out and release the stories about getting older, about aging, some of which you might not even be aware of. I ran this course once before, but it was called Second Spring, and it was a total flop. I thought it was such a great idea. I had one class, and 3 people came and never ever took off. So this is a different version of it. I think you're going to have fun. That's all I have for you today. Look, I kept it under 30 minutes. I'm so proud of myself. I love to talk. All right. Talk to you next week. Totally open to topics. I can't always think of them by myself. So have a great whatever day. Such a habit, isn't it, to say, have a great day? But what I really mean is have the day you decide today. You choose. You be sovereign. Have your own day. Oh, good, Tina. She said, as always, Michelle, I leave with clarity. Thank you. You're so good for my self-esteem. All right. Talk to you later. See you next week.